Okay. All right. So we're going to get going. Most people are here. I've got about 21 people, about 40 people registered. So I'll admit them as they go. First of all, I want to thank you guys all for taking part today, 10 a.m. on a Saturday, doing some civic duty and seeing what's going on in your community. It's always fantastic to see so many people so well involved and eager to know what's going on. I know there's a lot of information out there happening right now. It's kind of information overload, but none of it is specific to Redondo Beach or really, Riviera Village and what's happening in our own backyards and our own front yards. So this is this meeting's gonna be really geared towards what's happening in South Redondo and Redondo specific. I don't want to concentrate on a state or even county level what they're allowing us to do. We'll go over that, how that affects us. So first up, coronavirus COVID-19 updates, a city update. So basically, just so everyone knows, every week we have the city manager comes up with either new orders or just continues the orders that were on before, and we as a council basically confirm his orders or changes his orders like we've done before. Many times actually we confirm his order, and we actually have changed a few things. In the last council meeting last week, we didn't do anything in terms of changing anything that he's had in place. The one before that, we did do a couple of things, and that is we got the Veterans Park Farmers Market going. We got the Riviera Village, Catalina, blocked off area that temporary use directed staff to work directly with the Riviera bid to move that going, or to get that going, excuse me, in terms of getting the streets shut down. So a lot of questions on the Riviera Village and what's going to be happening there, and I'm going to address that in a few minutes. But first, I want to keep this more towards the COVID coronavirus city update questions and answers. I had a lot of questions on that. One thing that I had questions on is how does it affect our businesses here in Redondo? So we've just taken the tack that we will adopt all state and county orders. So whatever those might be, we're not going to add any extra layers of complexity. So your workout places that you get to go work out at, those have been officially opened as per Thursday's order from the county health department. We're following all the county health department orders. So as long as you have social distancing in place for workout centers, for restaurants, for gatherings and groups, beach activities, you're fine. The county had an update to the health orders on Thursday, which allowed the beaches to be essentially fully open. Not that there's ever been any real enforcement on the things that people have been doing down there. For instance, gathering in small groups, umbrellas and things like that. We did a good job the first weekend or two, but after that, it's kind of slowed down a lot for a couple of good reasons. It's just too hard to enforce. There's still no I saw some volleyball activity happening down the beaches just yesterday, but there's no official county volleyball nets that are happening down there. And that's important because group play of sports activities along the beach is not really allowed, but it's kind of happening to a small degree. As long as everyone is social distancing and keeping themselves to themselves, I think it's fine for now. COVID testing, we have free testing going at CVS clinic on PCH, 316 South PCH, which is the corner of Ruby and PCH. If you want to get COVID tested, go to the CVS. I'm not sure exactly what the parameters are in terms of if you need insurance or if you have to pay a deposit or you have to have some sort of paperwork. I don't know. All I know is that the CVS is allowing drive-through testing, and that's at CVS at 316 South PCH on the corner of Ruby and PCH. I myself actually got tested the other day for the antibody test. A lot of you guys, some of you guys might know, I worked in a higher risk environment for a while, and it's good for everyone to do. The antibody test is basically they're testing for the two things. I'm not sure exactly what the medical term is, but the two things that are left over in your bloodstream after you had a virus. And I came up negative on that. I was actually kind of surprised because I came in contact with a lot of people in February who said claimed they had it. So we'll see. You know, we're only testing about 1% of the population right now, so we need to increase that testing to a large degree. If you guys noticed, on Friday or Thursday, they had the largest one-day increase of coronavirus infections. That is in part due to a couple of factors. One is they stopped testing, and in Redondo Beach, we were up +7, I believe, to 140, 171. I don't have the numbers here directly in front of me. I'll see if I can find it. It's interesting to know because when you have a backlog of testing and you're not doing your testing and all of a sudden you start up again, you're going to have higher numbers. And you know, I think if we look at the idea of what we're doing right now, the county is doing is opening up with social distancing, with masks, allowing us to have our farmers market, allowing us to have our dining outside. I think the idea is, hey, this is going to be in our community, and we just need to manage the infection rate and manage the do what we can down the village, down in the beach, down in these areas to not have close contact with people that we don't know. Let's see, what else did I have here? Landlords out there. I'd like to hear from some landlords. If you guys are landlords right now, I've heard from a couple of people regarding commercial and residential renter issues, people who haven't been paying. There is no eviction moratorium in Redondo Beach. That is at a state level right now. And the county is voting on something, I believe, on Tuesday regarding evictions and moratoriums on evictions regarding COVID-19. So there's a lot of landlords, commercial and residential, that are dealing with tenants who are absolutely refusing to pay. And even though they can, and some tenants who just simply cannot pay. So there are some resources out there for those landlords and renters out there to understand what is legal, what is not. You have a year to pay back that rent. It's not rent free. So that's important to know. Everyone needs to be on the same path, and we're not just simply trying to take advantage of the situation. A lot of concern there. Let's see. LA County beaches and the bike path along Redondo are completely open. The stairs on Avenue C are closed. There was an incident with some BMX bike riders going down those stairs doing some stupid stuff, and so those stairs are the only ones that are closed, and that's not really directly related to COVID. Got that question quite a bit. Other than that, let's see, do I have any other direct COVID coronavirus updates? Does anyone have any questions on coronavirus updates, or want to, yeah, shout anything out? Maybe put something into the chat there, or speak up before we move on to the next thing. Yes, sir, Steve.
Nils, can you give us a few more words about plans for?
I don't hear you. Steve, I don't hear you. I don't think anyone else can hear you. Uh-oh.
I'm off mute, so I can't tell you.
I hear something. Say it again.
Yeah. I'm off mute, so I'm not sure what's
Oh,
happening.
there you go. It's just very, very quiet. Go ahead and say it again.
Sorry. So the question was, can you give us a little bit more information about plans for using public spaces, sidewalks, and streets for restaurant expansion?
So yeah, great question. So I'm going to hit that up regarding the Riviera Village updates, outdoor dining and things like that, because that's kind of a larger conversation that I want to have. So we'll do that. That great question. I will get to that. Anything else? Have anyone else questions on that? Okay. I don't see anyone else put their hand up or questions. Let's see. Okay, so what I'll do now is go on to the next section, which is Riviera village updates, businesses that are open, farmers markets, outdoor dining, retail. So farmers market is open down at the Triangle on Sunday. So that's open from, I believe, 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. So come on down, do some shopping, park your car, put some money in the meter. Also, the farmers market at Veterans Park is open as well on Thursdays. We got that open, I believe, 2 weeks ago now. So they've been open. Let's see, businesses that are open in the village right now. Essentially, as of the last update that we had was from the health department on Thursday, I believe it was, that they came out with, is as long as you can do your 50% capacity for retail and restaurants and all workout centers. So we have a Pilates place and some other workout centers in the village and the surrounding areas. As long as you can social distance, you have guards between the people. You also have a cleaning regimen that you go through before and after during the day. All these things, basically all the businesses are being allowed to be open again. Bars, I believe, are going to be open statewide. I believe they start opening up this weekend, I want to say. I don't know what the county has to say on that. I want to say, or I remember reading something that they were allowed this weekend as well. That's a high-risk environment, bars, so I'm not sure how that's going to really work out. Basically, it's reduced capacity at all businesses. So going to outdoor dining in the Riviera Village. I'm going to pull up real quick let me see if I can find this real quick. But I've been working with the Riviera Business Improvement District quite closely to get Catalina between Rockefeller and Turquoise. If you guys know that, Vista Del Mar and Riviera House there. South, what was that? Alena? South Alena? No. Basically, to shut that area down, to use some barricades on either side, have a fire lane between the two, and then the individual restaurants can set up tables in selected areas, up to 108 different tables that they can set up. And the tables will be cleaned and maintained by the restaurants. The bid will maintain the program from either having from trash receptacles to security if they need it, to ensure that tables are socially distanced apart from each other, and the businesses themselves will be paying the bid to pay for that whole project. It is in the planning phase right now with city staff. I just saw something come through the other day. Let's see here. Where is it? Riviera Village. It's almost complete. There's some minor questions. Hopefully it'll be done by midweek next week, so they'll be open for next weekend. I'm not sure if, I really hope that they can be successful at that. I'm going to share real quick, screen share the COVID. There you go. So if you guys can see that, get that out of the way, perfect. It's kind of a little hard to see here, but basically this is the Riviera Village. You guys can all see that? Give me a thumbs up, someone. Jerry, perfect, awesome. All right, so this is the Riviera Village. So right here we have the triangle parking. Hold on. make sure I have this right. Yes, Triangle parking lot up here. Trader Joe's is over here. This is Rockefeller right down here. And let me see here. So this is Rockefeller right down here in this area. So the closure is going to happen from here to here, right here. And this whole area will be blocked off, right? So traffic will be able to go around and then through here as well. So the only parking that's going to be taken is here in the middle. And if you notice, let's see here. This is going to be the table layout, proposed table layout. Let me get rid of that. So this is the proposed table layout. So you'll have these tables set up here on either in the street themselves. The curb will not have any dining to allow full transit for pedestrians to go through. On the west side of the street, there will be a fire lane, so the fire can go through. Barricades, water-filled barricades on either side, 12 feet from center point from table to table. So it's ample enough room all the way through. And of course, walking areas on the outside edges, outside skirt areas of the dining area. The tables will be provided by the business owners themselves, the restaurateurs. The walking areas will be allowed for the retailers to have put out their equipment as long as they have the ADA required 5 feet of space on the curbs or on the the sidewalk. And so they will also then be able to take advantage of this situation. They decided to not allow retail in the dining area for a couple of reasons. One is trip hazards, fall hazards. People, if you put a retail right here, people standing right here, and you know, wind and whatever else going to the table next to them, it just wouldn't have really worked. So they opted to not go down that path, to just allow the pedestrian area, walking area. Now, if you notice, this is the place that's shut down, but up here is not shut down in this area, right? You guys see this up here in Catalina. I made sure that when they go through this, that everyone understands that these businesses up here, whether it's the restaurants, sit down or take out restaurants, have access to these tables, and they do. They are allowed to use all the businesses here in the village that are restaurants will be allowed to take advantage of this area. So Casa Playa, Padone's, let's see, what is that? The Brew House, Riviera Brew House there, what do they call? Redondo Beach Brewing Company, excuse me. Gabby James, Yellow Vase. Make sure you give a shout out. L&L Barbecue. All those places will be allowed to take advantage of these tables. They have outdoor tables already. L&L, Casa Playa already have these tables, so they can just bring their tables down. Again, they're going to be maintaining the tables, the cleanliness and the trash and all that kind of stuff down there. So that's the plan. It will be, I forgot exactly what the time frame on this is, whether it's going to be for a week or 2 weeks, a month. I'm not exactly sure yet. But I know it's temporary. There's a coastal commission permit involved as well. I don't think it will be a problem to go through coastal commission. They understand social distancing requirements and the fact that this is temporary. So we'll see. Like I said in a couple meetings before, the Riviera Summerfest that they have down in the village at the end of June is not going to happen this year. So this might be a good way for those villages, for those businesses to create that community environment. So that's what I have on that. Any questions on that? Yes, we'll do Steve. Steve
Yeah,
first, and then Karen.
That's a great plan for the folks whose restaurants open onto public property along Catalina. But what are we doing to help restaurants like the Bullpen or Buca de Beppo or the Italian place near Vaughn's that don't open into public spaces? They open into private parking areas.
Right. So great question. Just as a reminder, as much as I love the Bullpen, that is in Torrance, and Buca de Beppo, even though Bullpen has a Redondo address, they like to claim Redondo. They're not. I like reminding people on that. The center line is actually Vaughn's. Vaughn's is in Redondo Beach, and Bettelino's is actually in Torrance, so people know that. Fantastic question. What about the restaurants that are outside of Riviera Village? Fantastic. Thank you very much for bringing that up. That's actually very near and dear to my heart because that's how a lot of this stuff started. We have a temporary use permit, TUP, for the usage of people's commercial, private, driveway and parking areas. So places like Mama D's and Buca de Beppo can set up in their parking lots and use their parking to do outdoor dining. They want to set up a tent. If they want to set up a dining area, whatever they wanted to do to increase their floor space, so to speak, for tables, they can fill out this form, have a plan, submit it to the city. The form, the cost on that was $210. At the last council meeting, I got a fee waiver done for that. I pushed for that to make sure the businesses don't have to pay for that $200. It's not much money for the city, and it's really going to affect a lot of these smaller businesses like Mama D's and other areas that are in the city. And that goes citywide too. I just want everyone to know that's citywide. So any business like Charlie's over in the parking lot by PCH and Agate Barrel over there, they'll be able to apply for this same program as well. Businesses on Artesia Boulevard will be able to apply for that program as well. That TUP has been in place for a few weeks now. They've processed, I believe, Brandy said 2 or 3 businesses for that so far. So that's really good to hear. And it's great question, great point. We got to get all of our business up and running. So restaurants are number one. Karen, you got a question?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify. So the barricades will be in place for whatever the temporary period is, permanently for that period, right? So 7 days a week and all day?
7 days a week, all day, exactly. Yes.
Okay.
And I believe it's for a 2-week stint, but I have to check that. Don't quote me on that.
Okay. I just had one other side question. You might not know the answer, but how does a business determine their capacity to calculate that 50%?
Great question. So the determination is based upon what the fire department allows in a given room size. So if your given room only allows, so the health department does 2 things. Health department and fire department work in conjunction with this. Fire department says you can only have 110 people in this room, or let's say for mathematical purposes, 100 people in this room. The health department comes in and says, great, you can have 100 people in this room, but you can only have so many tables here. So you can only have this to say 50 tables in here, or excuse me, enough tables for 50 people in here. So that's the floor, 50 people. If you clear all the tables out, the fire department will allow you to have 100, and health department will allow you to have 100 as well. But the amount of tables that you have is determined by the amount of people. So that brings your number value down to 50. So now, according to the new health orders, I believe it's 50%. It could be 60%. Let's just say for mathematical purposes, 50%. You can only have 25 people in that room to serve food. So that's the formula that they've been using. And I had lunch at where is it? At Rockefeller on Thursday last week. I had one of the American Prime Burgers. It was delicious. Everyone should have one. It's delicious. And it was. Tables were really far spaced out between each other. They were easily 6 to 10 feet away from each other. There were no paper menus. All menus were on your phone. There was a QR code that you scan with your phone, and it comes up on your phone on your phone, and you do the order on your phone, or you look on the menu on the phone, and then you tell the waiter that hey, I would like XYZ, and then they go ahead and order that and come back to you. So there's some places that I saw are doing paper one-time use paper menus that you take and they just throw away right away. So other places have gone to a full digital menu, which is kind of nice. Wayne, you got a question?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Obviously, this is for food service. I know that the restaurants were given a variance for like alcohol service too. Are they going to be able to serve alcohol in this blocked off area? And then secondly, I would suggest the city, just because of past history, if this is a pilot program, probably put in 4-inch tall red letters saying that this is a pilot program so that it isn't left up permanently, if that's the case. I think this is a great idea to jumpstart it. And also finally, are any businesses able to unilaterally block people from being able to use any of those spaces in the area? Or is this something that it's collectively for everyone? So one restaurateur, for example, can't prevent someone from using a table in that area.
So while I talk, I'm going to screen share real quick the temporary use application. So there you go. You guys can all see that. Okay, so good question. So basically, first question is it's temporary. It's through the BID, Business Improvement District down in the village. What's important about that is the Business Improvement District is dealing with this. So they are directly working with the city, and the city can revoke that permit. It is less like an outdoor dining program and more like a special event. And it actually is, they're treating it like a special event. So the city can withdraw that permit whenever they want. And all the tables in that given area will need to be removed because there will be traffic coming through there, and the city will remove those tables for whoever owns those businesses. And when it comes to the tables, as far as I know of, each business provides their own outdoor tables right now. I know the BID was thinking about providing tables. That might happen as well. People can rent some tables. I'm unsure as to what exactly the plan is, the guaranteed plan. So all I can tell you is it's going to be up to the individual businesses to police their own tables, make sure they're kept clean, and make sure that everything, they'll be labeled. I talked to the BID and say, hey, putting numbers on the table so that people know this table is for Casa Playa, table number 1, so that when they make an order, they don't have to have people running back and forth. They can just one time come down and deliver food at table number 1 for Casa Playa. They really liked that idea. I thought it was a good idea. Just last week, I was in Sacramento in the Bay Area, and outdoor dining was happening. And outdoor dining on the pedestrian sidewalk right of way was happening. And what they did was they actually blocked off the parking with the water barriers and concrete barriers, and gave ample room for people to walk on the street around the restaurant. And up there, they had a couple of things. They had a business improvement district and a business district, and an owner's district, a landlord's district, or property owner's district. And they all worked together with the city. And they started this process back in April, actually. And so it was in place for a few weeks now. So when they allowed the outdoor dining to happen, they had everything already in place. They knew what was going on, so they were well ahead of the game. And it was actually a fantastic dining experience. It was actually really cool because you're sitting there and you're definitely a few feet from everywhere. And even though it was very quiet, it brought a lot of life to the street. It made people think, oh yeah, there is something going on right now. So it worked really well. Anyone else?
Oh, the one other question I had too was, I know they have food as their service there, but normally when they have events in Riviera Village where they serve alcohol, they always have it kind of segregated to one area.
Oh,
is that
great
going to be
question.
something here too, or is that the only thing I'm saying? Because obviously, if people do drink a little bit too much, they tend to not only the barriers come down emotionally as well as physically. So obviously, if someone's going to get a little too inebriated, they may create an inadvertent spread of COVID. So.
Yeah, so great question regarding the ABC license. So the Riviera BID does not have an ABC license, alcohol beverage control license, so they won't be able to provide anyone. Everyone's going to have to use their own license. With that said, the city has to sign off and say that this is going to be an allowed area. I am no ABC license expert, but I believe they're going to have a roped off area, somewhat of a controlled area, to be able to say what is allowed and what's not allowed. So that's as far as I know. I was planning on calling the ABC next week to understand what exactly they'll be allowed to do. So that way, when this is allowed through, everyone will be on the same page. So that's a great question. Make sure there's, and I actually brought it up too regarding a security guard if they need a security guard in case. Rather be safe than sorry. But one step at a time. Let's get this thing approved first, and don't make it too complicated, and kind of go from there and see how the people agree to it. Yes, it's temporary. It's supposed to last. It's going to be on an as-needed basis, 2 weeks to a month. And another question I had here in the chat box: I agree for the restaurant somewhere being excluded. Vista, More, and PB Boulevard. No, just so you know, Clarabelle. The other restaurants will have full access to this area. It will be a community dining experience, so to speak. All the restaurants in the Riviera Village who are part of the Business Improvement District will be allowed to have a table there, and they will be allowed to utilize that area. Why would you extend it to another block? No, we're not going to extend it to another block because that cuts off the flow of traffic, and it's enough of a disruption to the general area to not. We want to minimize your interruption to traffic flow in the Riviera Village. This is the easiest way to do it. There's been talk of, if this is really popular, to extend it. Again, this is just a test to see how it goes. People love it, we'll continue on. If people hate it and it becomes an issue, we can get rid of it. But right now, we're just trying to see what works, help the businesses down there in Riviera Village. If you notice, a lot of parking is taken on Catalina, and it's full. But in the triangle, it's completely empty. So that means people are just parking directly outside of the businesses doing what they need to do, which means there's not much going on. So we want to get these businesses up and running as fast as possible. Any other questions on outdoor dining, Catalina, farmers market, businesses that are open? Anyone? Throw it in the chat box. Throw it. Yeah, chat box. Anyone else got anything? Questions, comments? Turn on your mic. All right, we have if there's nothing else here on that, we're gonna move on to the next item, which is discussion on our budget and upcoming council items. So everyone knows, just to talk about it one more time real quick. Our budget is due. We're going to be voting on it next week, Tuesday, as a city. The city staff is projecting, and well, they said a $9 million budget deficit, but between the two, the other funds that are out there, we essentially have about a $13 million, $14 million deficit, and so we need to plug that hole somehow. And one of the ways that we are doing it is through one-time cuts, long-term cuts, using one-time monies, and cutting services, and cutting maintenance and operations, and cutting the things like vehicle replacements. So extending the life of our vehicles in Redondo Beach for an extra year. There is some significant cutting going on in the fire department. The Harbor Patrol is due to be cut 1/3 of the shifts, or 3 shifts that cover 7 days a week down there. City management has proposed to cut one of those shifts, so once every 5 days, that Harbor Patrol goes completely dark for an entire day and night. And also, we have a ladder truck, 4 people on the ladder truck. The staff has proposed to cut that down to 3 people on that truck. There's some reorganization in the police department with some vacant positions. They're going to leave those positions vacant for now and not fund those positions to help save some of the money. Police department runs about $45 million a year on the total budget of $96 million. Fire department runs about $22, $23 million a year on a $96 million budget. So between those two, we spend roughly 66 million, 65, 66 or so, 66 million plus or minus of our $96 million budget. So that's well over 60% of our budget. 65-66% of our total budget to public safety. So those are the biggest areas that we have. And they're only receiving about a 5% cut versus the other departments, which are going to be receiving about a 10 to 15% cut. Public Works is going to have, to remember the exact position, the amount of positions, but in total, we have 32 positions that will be either defunded or deauthorized, with 2 actual filled positions with 2 employees that will be laid off. Public Works has, I think we're on, oh man, I don't know, I don't remember the exact number. Jerry, if you knew the number, you can jump in there for me. Public Works, I don't know, I forgot the exact number of Public Works, but they're the vast majority. Do you know?
I don't recall, no.
Yeah, okay, I think it's around 20 something spots, 20 spots I want to say, 15, 20 spots. But there's a lot, our risk manager is being defunded and actually cut. So risk management, so that's a big deal. Every department pretty much sees one position being cut, from library, community services, community development, public safety. Everyone's getting across the board, and depending upon how fast this economy comes roaring back, from sales tax to TOT tax, which are 2 main drivers which are being cut significantly. Our TOT taxes are hotel bed tax. That is projected to have year over year about a 40 or 50% cut overall. So we get about $8 to $9 million, $8.5 million in there. So we projecting that down to about $4 million this next year. So we'll see how that goes. Other than that, anyone have any questions on or feelings on some of these cuts overall? Wayne, if you got your hand up, I see.
Yeah, I had one question. I think it may have already been covered, and I apologize if I'm repeating it, but I know one issue that, they were talking about cutting the harbor patrol budget. Are we going to still keep the police harbor boat active, the little bat boat they have there in the harbor? Because I know that I've been hearing from some folks that its original mission was to focus on the harbor, but yet it's responding up and down the Manhattan Beach and down a PV on occasion. Has that been like mothballed for the time being, or is that still going to be active?
So the police boat in the harbor is going to be cut back significantly, the hours of service and the amount of service. It was bought about 2 years ago. It's an extra Coast Guard boat. Coast Guard sells their equipment to as surplus after they're done using it. We bought it for $115,000. Chief Kaufman has done a great job at working with surrounding cities, El Segundo, Manhattan Beach, Hermosa, as well as higher up agencies, the county, the Fed, the state, to get funding, get training, services, equipment for that boat. Like you said, it gets used outside the harbor quite a bit. I think before we start using that vessel outside the harbor, we need to make sure inside the harbor is well taken care of, and that's my concern more so than outside. What happens outside of Redondo Beach, stays outside of Manhattan. Redondo Beach, not really, but actually not at all. But I'm more concerned about what happens inside the harbor. So the boat's in the harbor, it's sitting there. It's going to be, unfortunately, going to be significantly cut back, the hours of service, level of service for the community. It's still going to be there though, and they will have weekend patrols and patrols throughout the week, especially during the summer months, so on busy weekends. They used it during the protests in Hermosa Beach the other day, Manhattan Beach last week, or excuse me, 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago. So any other questions on that? No other questions on the budget? Really? How does everyone feel about the harbor patrol being cut back by a third?
Well, I think that's a dangerous precedent, because how many people live full time in the harbor on boats? It's kind of like, you're kind of like asking, it'd be like asking a resident to say, oh, hey, by the way, we're not going to have a third shift of the fire department now. So if your house burns down, just have a couple of hoses ready to go. It seems like it's a dangerous precedent. And I'm just hoping that, you mentioned we don't have a risk manager. I wonder what the risk manager would say to the cutting back of that and what exposure it could have to the city. But one of the things I was going to ask you, that I meant to mention earlier, I know the city has a substantial expense for body cams that the police department wear. If I remember in the budget, Mr. Hefkin said something like I might be wrong. There was like an initial purchase of like I don't know, $100-something-thousand, and then there's a recurrent fee for that. But I was shocked to hear that the police chief has said it's an optional item whether the officer decides to turn their camera on or off. And it seems like from a liability standpoint, that's a mistake that I don't think that, I think it's a decision a police officer in the heat of something going on probably has the wherewithal to know whether it's appropriate to turn it on or off, because if he doesn't, there's no evidence, and then suddenly we've got a $10 million lawsuit against the city, or potentially something else bad can happen. So I guess if they're going to if they're not going to use them, then why are we paying this money for them? And if we do have them, we should be using them to protect the city. So I don't know. That's a complicated question, but it's something that came to mind when I was hearing the budget stuff the other night.
So yeah, so I don't know what exact numbers are myself on terms of the body cams, what the cost is. A lot of these hardware nowadays in the police sector, you don't buy, you lease, because it changes. In fact, the smallest cost is the actual hardware itself. It's the backup services behind the hardware. So for instance, on body cameras, you have to manage the video and the data that comes off of it. You know, managing data is extremely expensive and it's hard to do. So when it's from the tasers, for instance, we just bought a $200,000 50-something tasers for $200,000 a year, I want to say, I think it was, over the life of the contract. The tasers were the cheapest part of it. It was the other portions of it. So every time that device gets used, there's a whole data set behind that, and whether it's for training or for in person. Same thing with the body cameras. So it's not cheap. It's not easy to do. Regarding the body cameras, you are right. Right now, it's voluntary for each individual officer whether or not they want to have them on or use them. I think I myself will be looking at that very interestingly and saying, why is this voluntary? Number one, and number two is I want to remind everyone out there that a body camera only shows one more portion of the incident. It shows one more lens of what's going on, literally a lens, right? And it doesn't capture everything. And there's, like they say, there's always two sides to a story, and this adds one more side to that story. So I think it's a huge help for the community and the police, especially. People need to understand how difficult the police is when they show up and they have someone yelling at them, and they have nothing to back it up with. This backs this up. And when something goes wrong, like you said, Mr. Craig, this hopefully will help the city out. And that's what we need to look at, is helping the city out to make sure that things are done right, and protocols were followed, and helping us tell that story to come to a resolution as fast as possible. Any other questions on the budget?
Yeah, Nils, one comment on, Wayne brought this up on the Harbor Patrol, and you mentioned it as well. There are a couple of issues there that the Budget and Finance Commission was concerned about, and we recommended that the city not allow one day of the week to go dark as far as response for that group. I don't know exactly what that means or what's involved in that, but if it's one thing to slow service down and to have a call redirected to another office so that ultimately or finally someone responds to that. It seems to be quite another to say that one day a week that line is going to go dark and that people there cannot reach someone to register a complaint. So the two issues there are that the safety of the people involved in that one day when it's dark, and the liability of the city for letting it go dark. And for both those reasons, we recommended not allowing that line to go dark, whatever that in fact means. We understand that service has to be cut back and that costs have to be reduced, but letting that phrase "going dark" is kind of an alarming phrase, and we recommended against that decision package being implemented.
Yeah, it's a fantastic point. And, I am not going to. When I saw that decision package, I thought there was a mistake, because I was like, you want to take out public safety for an entire 24-hour period and not have a backup plan and not even know what that looks like. I didn't think that was a very responsible move. I think that it was. I think it's something that they thought about, and okay, we'll just do this. We'll see what comes about. See the community reacts. Kind of go from there. I've taken a lot of interest in that particular item. I do not plan on having our harbor patrol go dark for a 24-hour period once every 5 days. Everyone has to realize that the harbor is bleeding money right now, left, right, and center. But to save ourselves a couple $100,000, like Mayor Brand pointed out one time, we have one yacht that's worth $200,000 catch on fire. It'll catch another boat on fire really quickly. And it happens at, 7 o'clock at night. And it takes the firemen an extra 15 minutes to get down there. Then, how is that appropriate? How is that okay? One thing I've looked at in the city and the fire service is we're cutting a lot of frontline personnel right now. And we're not pushing much off onto the management side. And I've been taking a hard look at that. And I personally don't believe it is a viable option to cut that harbor patrol down to nothing. We'll see. I'm working on a solution for that. I think there is a solution there to have continued support and operations in the harbor, 24/7 service. We'll see what that ends up and what it looks like to be. But for them to surprise us like this, I don't think I'll be able to have an answer for you right now, or maybe on Tuesday. It's going to be. I've got things in the works to I'm thinking about. So those are my concerns on there. They're very valid concerns.
Yeah. Nils, I had one other quick question. I don't mean to monopolize it, but since we're talking about public safety and service to our community, can we finally get the rest of the council to agree to at least complete the fire department surveying? That has potential, I think, was it between 3 and 7 million a year. Now, granted, they can't flip the switch and suddenly save money. It's going to take a long time, but maybe that's something we should be exploring again, as opposed to, after we make these very tough draconian cuts. It seems like that's a logical step to look at, and I don't see how anyone in the council could be against them just doing the exploratory review of that.
Especially since there's no cost to the review, not even the 25,000 additional costs that we had talked about before, because the union has agreed to pay that. So it's a no-cost option to explore that further.
Well, actually, to add one thing, Jerry, I've talked to the fire department union member. Unfortunately, they offered that originally. They don't have the money to pay for it now, so that cost would still be there. However, what I understand is that if the city later on were to actually contract with the county would reimburse that fee back to the city. So either way, it could be no cost. But it's something that I know they offered at the time, and obviously they're experiencing crunches as well as the city is too. So they pull that offer off the table just right now.
Even if we have to pay the 25,000, you've got an option here of a $25,000 maximum cost to give you a cost savings of anywhere from 0 to 7 million. There's a wide range of what that cost figure is. But I would agree that's a step that we should take just to do the analysis.
Yeah, you don't usually get that good of a what 30 or 40x return in the stock market. I mean, this is a pretty darn good option. If it's true, it's great. But if it's we need to at least do our due diligence before we start cutting services. And I just hope someone doesn't get hurt from some of these cuts.
So $25,000 is nothing. I've racked up more than $25,000 in legal bills this year alone. So I can tell you 25 grand is absolutely nothing. That's not very much at all. It's paltry, it's puny, it's ridiculous. It's absurd that we have not gone down this path with county fire to further explore the second phase of the option and then fully look at what you can contract out to the county. You never want to end up in a situation where you're forced to go down a certain path, when you show up at the bargaining table and you're forced to make certain decisions. That is a weak bargaining position, and it is a horrible bargaining position. No one should ever go in a bargaining room and bargain from a point of weakness. That is called Hermosa Beach, and Hermosa Beach bargained from a point of weakness. They were forced to go down this path because they had so many injuries. They had firefighters working every single day and every other day. They were borrowing firefighters from City of Manhattan Beach, from City Redondo. They had 3 shifts of firefighters, plus that actually, and they couldn't fill a 3-day shift of firefighters. And the fact that we haven't done this study only shows you how badly this has been mismanaged in the fire department. I mean, just overall completely mismanaged. And now we're cutting what Councilman Horvath said during the discussion, that we're a skeletal crew in, actually, excuse me, I take it back. Kenny Campos said we're a skeletal crew in Redondo Beach. And Councilman Horvath came through and talked about, oh yeah, we're a skeletal crew, but now we're going less than that because the county is proposing, and one of their options is to go less than that. Well, guess what? We're losing actually firefighter service now for a higher cost, and we're getting less service on our own. So I think it's a bad situation to be in right now. Horrible situation to be in right now for us. I think there's ways forward to make us not cut those frontline firefighters. It's going to take the council to come to agree and make some hard decisions. We don't want to be in a situation with Hermosa. I said this back during the meetings last year, that we're going down the path of Hermosa Beach. And here we are a year later, and we're cutting not just fat, not just meat, we're cutting actual bone now. Frontline firefighters, and we're getting a reduced level of service at the same level and the same cost to the city. And when we're cutting positions and the total overall cost because of overtime ends up being the same, it's an issue. We need to engage other cities about fire services. We need to rethink our entire fire department as a whole. And the $25,000, I think, was an excuse to not go down this path. And now, unfortunately, we're paying the price for that. So, yeah, I feel very strongly about this, because I see, a year ago we could have had a plan in place, at least something in place, to help us augment services, whether it's from paramedic services or fire services, in many different forms and fashions. We can rethink our fire department. We can rethink how we do business. But what we're doing right now is not rethinking. It's our hand is being forced by outside issues, budget issues that we don't have control over. And it's an issue. And I agree with you. I think we can move forward in a better way. And I'm definitely going to be looking at the fire department very closely this year in the budget to make sure that we have more options in what staff is presenting us, and different ideas, different thoughts. So we'll see if we can make that happen. But those are my thoughts on that. That's for sure. Anyone else? Any questions on the budget?
One other thing, Nils, and I know this might be more of a touchy subject for some, but if memory serves me, our city attorney is like the 5th highest paid official in the state of California, and makes more than
elected official,
and actually makes more than the governor of California. I know that the city treasurer decided to do a cut in his pay, but offset it with his staff. Has any thought gone into, since this is an elected position, why are we paying our city attorneys so much when most of the work he doesn't even do, and subcontracts it out to other attorneys for other special functions anyway? I don't know if that's an easy process to change. If we did do that, what would be the mechanism to actually let the public have a say in where our money is going in that regard?
So just so everyone knows, in City of Redondo Beach, we have multiple elected positions. We have obviously the city council that's elected, the mayor that's elected. We also have the city treasurer who's elected, the city clerk who's elected, and an elected city attorney. They essentially all have their own departments. And if they want to cut their own pay, they have to voluntarily say, we're going to cut their pay. The council can come to all those personnel and say, hey, we'd like to cut your pay. and they would have to agree to it individually. But, I don't think we as a council, well, actually maybe we can, but you know, our city attorney is an elected official, and elected officials get elected on their political affiliations and their political thoughts, their political mindset. They have an agenda. That's why they get elected. So, you know, that's a question for our city attorney to ask. That is a question that will go down. You know, we have a lot of legal issues in Redondo Beach right now. We have a lot of lawsuits in our court that have been thrown against us. So some good questions there. I really can't answer you that question. I had a question here going back regarding police. Regarding RVPD's jurisdiction is inside the harbor. What percentage of the boat personnel is coming out of Harbor Enterprise? I'm not exactly sure the numbers of the Harbor Enterprise or the amount of money, I should say, that's coming out of Harbor Enterprise, internal and from Retitlement and Harbor Enterprise, which are two different funds in the harbor. I'm not exactly sure how much money that is and what the percentage of it is, but I will say that I know it's being cut back. I don't have the budget report directly in front of me, but I think it's a good question to have. Yeah, so, you know, yeah, police is a hard one, right? We need to have police in the harbor. Here's a question. Body sets the salaries for our elected officials. So Steve asked the question, how much are salaries for elected officials? So you can look us all up on Transparent California. I make $927. All council members and mayor make $927 a month and a car stipend. And we get healthcare if we want to take it. And that's our pay for a job that is anywhere between 30 and plus hours a week doing this stuff. So it's not much. It's very little.
The question was, what body sets the salaries for elected officials?
The council. The council.
So the council could choose to change the city attorney's salary.
Yeah. So going back to the question earlier, I have not voted on the city manager's pay. I've not voted on the city attorney's pay, city treasurer's pay, city clerk's pay. City clerk asked for a pay increase last year, 3%, and we said no. So it's done by ordinance. It's a good question. I'll have to bring that up on Tuesday. If we could just unilaterally cut the pay of another elected official in the city, but everything is approved through the council. So that's the ultimate. You know, we're the ones who are ultimately responsible for everything in the city that goes on.
Thank you for that answer. But it seems to me that if we're making draconian cuts to public services, we ought to be taking the same cuts to the salaries of our public officials.
Yeah, I mean I mean, just personally, it's kind of hard for us and on the council to take a pay cut. I want to institute some reforms, but yeah, you're right. I mean, city treasurer, you know, he makes 25 grand a year. You know, city clerk, I'm not sure what the pay is there, and the city attorney, you can look everyone's numbers up on Transparent California. So I think the option there, what these people have all been saying, is we'll cut the department through maintenance and operations and other things other than cutting their own pay. Yeah, you're right, Steve. It's some question I'll be bringing up on Tuesday. Actually, good question. Sarah, you had your hand up. You have a question still? I saw you had a question that I think I answered through the chat box, Sarah, but if you want to unmute yourself, there you go.
Yeah, my question was about jurisdiction of the police boat. As I understand it, they have jurisdiction within the harbor. So under what jurisdiction do they go out of the harbor to patrol the coast during the protests and otherwise exit the harbor?
Great question. So Police have, as far as I understand, the jurisdiction for a city, it's up to either 1 mile out or 3 miles out. I forgot exactly. I think it's 1 mile out outside of the city boundaries on the ocean, where we can enforce our local ordinances and county ordinances, and depending upon if you're on a pier and things like that. We cannot go into other cities like Manhattan Beach or Hermosa Beach and enforce their laws unless we have an MOU in place that allows us to enforce that. Same thing with the county. So we can only enforce something where we have on paper that is allows us to enforce their ordinance. So Manhattan Beach, we just signed an agreement with the last two council meetings ago, where we have an understanding where they could put a personnel on our boat and we can enforce some of their laws on the water. Same thing with El Segundo. I don't believe I've seen that agreement come through for Hermosa Beach yet. Chief Kaufman's done a great job with working with other cities and getting them on board, so to speak, with the boat and jurisdiction and things like having their officers on our boat as well. They will not be driving our boat. They will only be allowed to be trained and be on our vessel as we cruise out there. Coast Guard, I believe our boat is a part of the Homeland Security team, along with the sheriffs and Port of LA security. So they will do work out in the channel. They will do work further out, 3, 4, 5 miles out, for the various activities that happen out there. With that said, the number one thing I said about this boat when we bought it was I don't want our officers out in the channel doing enforcement actions, doing any type of actions that they can get hurt on. If we aren't taking care of our harbor and our backyard and our front yard, why are we going out to somebody else's front yard and backyard and other people's jurisdictions? There's some training and education that needs to happen with our officers, and I agree with that. Working with other departments is fantastic. I wish all of our departments did a great job of that. But with that said, I was very concerned, and still am very concerned today, with our police boat going to Hermosa and picking up kayakers, or our police boat going out to Manhattan Beach and enforcing ordinances. They really do belong inside the harbor, and we don't have a harbor boat. We have a open water boat. If you see, it's a very powerful boat. So, Scott, you have your hand raised. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead and ask any question you would like, you have the floor. I don't think I saw a question in the chat room, so you're unmuted. Go for it.
Hey, Nils, this is Gil.
No,
Oh, Gil, sorry.
Yeah,
Scout.
that's okay. I threw another name on. Okay, let's get back to the city attorney issue. And I know it's a little sticky for you. We get that. Okay, so in essence, to kind of, I guess, spread the information about, would it not be better then possibly, after you broach the subject, of the community banding together to looking at some of these positions that are somewhat bloated when it comes down to pay? I mean, the argument against reducing his pay is that if we do that for him as well as the assistant city attorney, that we will no longer get qualified people, which is, but you know, that's one thing. But he farms out most of the work anyway. And again, so would it be better if we band together as a community saying, hey, look, this guy's making, what, 600,000 plus. He's only managing 5 people. The city attorney in Los Angeles is handling 300 attorneys. So in essence, we could hire another city attorney if we cut his pay in half, and he's still making more than the LA city attorney. But see, again, everybody's gonna have to tighten their belt, and if we're paying this guy that much. So would it be best then is that as a community, we get together and start pushing this a little more and broaching the subject?
There is nothing more powerful than residents coming together and pushing a subject publicly, asking questions and making hay and protesting about something. That's why I'm sitting here in this seat with the council title in front of my name. I couldn't agree more with banding together and asking questions. Our city has had a long history of just kind of letting the people run things and have things happen. There's some things that you said are 100% right. Our city attorney's office hires and contracts out the majority of the work that's happening. Very little is actually done in-house, and they do a great job. Don't get us wrong. They are very busy, but if you compare the elected officials to other elected city attorneys in other cities, I think you'll start finding a lot of interesting questions happen and popping up. And the real question here is, as I've gotten into this position, I deal with a lot of city attorneys, and I deal with a lot of other elected officials and non-elected officials in other cities. So from city clerks, city treasurers, city managers, city attorneys, I deal with it all, and in other cities. And I think our community has to have a real question, a real fundamental question about our city attorney position, why it's elected. And
Well, again, we understand the elected stuff, but again, he supervises a staff of 7.
yeah,
That's it. Okay. Again, and he's making 469,000.
yeah,
Almost.
it's actually 429,000, I believe.
469,
Oh,
794.73 cents.
oh wow, there you go.
Okay. Plus whatever perk that may pop up on a vehicle or whatever else, and who knows whether it's a salaried or an overtime position.
That's total benefits.
That's
That's total benefits package. You always have to look at total benefits package and include that and say that, because the taxpayers are paying for medical, for health insurance, for retirement, and all the other pay that goes along with it, and the debt. the
Everybody
public
else is
debt.
making over 200,000,
And everybody else is making over 200,000.
almost
Okay.
300.
So again, and you have 2 assistants and 5 seniors. I mean, the structure aside, okay, the biggest question is going to be is who sets the salary and how do you adjust it? And I think the issue is going to come up possibly on the legal side is that how do we address this before the next election cycle? Because then I don't believe that you can reduce his pay during that in the middle of the election cycle. It actually makes it easier when the next cycle comes in, the new guy, where he decides to stay, he's going to stay, he or she, at a reduced rate.
So I think you can actually change his pay during the cycle, because it's not. I don't believe. You might be right. I don't know the exact answer on that. I know it's done by ordinance, and I know it's set by ordinance. You can look it up actually in the ordinance stuff. The city attorney's office shall get a 3% pay raise, every year, or whatever the exact verbiage is. I'm not exactly sure, but you're right.
How about this? Here's another question that comes up. Who can order or have an audit of the city attorney's office? Not that we're trying to be punitive.
Yeah, no, I understand.
How many lawsuits has the city engaged in? How many were farmed out to outside counsel? And what is the loss in win rate? And whether or not it's feasible to have 6 city attorneys or just hire an outside counsel?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And listen, this is not a personal issue by any means. This is a budget issue, and we have to ensure that we're getting the best bang for the buck. We are in hard times right now. We are actively cutting frontline fire, frontline police positions.
The city attorney.
And the city attorney's office, they do a great job, but we need to look at the entire budget as a whole. And you're absolutely right. It is a tough conversation to have, but it needs to be had right now. I agree with you 100%. And I think the questions you need to be asking are exactly what you asked, in addition to how many, the amount of this. I know this came up during the budget and finance meeting about 8 months ago. And the question was, how much do we spend on outside counsel?
Yeah.
How much are we spending on each firm for outside counsel? What's the list of outside counsel that we have the ability to hire for? What's the ability to renegotiate some of those terms? That's an important question to have. You know, success rate, somebody brought up a success rate. That's a very difficult one to say, because judge, you know, when you go to in front of a judge, they can be very emotional with things, and you don't know the outcome of it. So I think comparing to other cities, Huntington Beach, look at Huntington Beach. They're a very similar city to ours. They are much larger, like 200,000 people, but they have an elected city attorney as well. He's very active politically speaking. He runs a lot of attorneys as well. And I think you'll see some things in there from a coastal beachside community that has elected city attorney and how he runs his department and what he does. I think, yeah, I think, Gil, these are questions that can be brought up in during election time if someone wants to run in that position. Or remember, I just want to remind everyone that the city attorney's office hasn't been contested since 2008, I want to say. So I'm not exactly sure the date, but it's been well over 10 years. So 2 or 3.
Okay, so will you bring this up
Yes.
during the next council meeting and indicating that I would say a portion of your constituents are curious about this? I mean, if obviously if he believes that he's well worth the amount we're paying, then obviously one, either we see results or not. Because one of the bigger issues that occurred is his reluctance, and again, that's why I'm not saying it's personal, but his very reluctance to address the issues concerning the homelessness. You know, he stands there and smiles, and it's okay. But the Manhattan Beach city attorney is very aggressive and interprets the law differently. Now, the other thing you're going to have to look at and bring up possibly is that if our police are arresting less people because of all the other the rules and laws that are coming around on the state, if they're arresting less, that means that it requires less city attorneys to prosecute these, if they're even doing that. Most of this goes to the district attorney anyway. So again, it's one of the things that he's going to have to weigh as to whether he gives himself up or does he give up one of his people.
You're absolutely right. And I've just so you know, I've written these questions down, and I think they're fantastic questions. I haven't concentrated that much yet on the budget on the city attorney side. I've been busy with other portions of it, but I actually had this note down to talk with the city attorney and the budget cuts and what goes on over there for the costs that we're getting. That department has been increasing in costs dramatically the last couple of years. We've gotten a lot more lawsuits been thrown at us, ridiculous lawsuits, I might say. But to answer part of your question regarding homelessness, he will point to him hiring a quality of life prosecutor. It's Joy Abequine, which deals with homelessness issues and things like quality of life issues, short-term rentals, things like that. That would be his response. Is I've hired an attorney who now goes down to the courthouse 51 or 8. I'm not sure what number it is. Some courthouse, and she's there and prosecuting homeless issues. And he said he didn't have the resources before to prosecute those homeless issues. Now he does. And I think one of the reluctances he says it publicly all the time, is his conservative nature in dealing with the legal issues and his very conservative way of thinking from a negative standpoint of us winning something and moving things forward in the courtroom is one of his principles. So he will take a very conservative look at things. Can I really enforce the anti-camping ordinance? Can I have something available to me, like for instance, a bed in Bellflower at Salvation Army facility, and say, that's my bed I have available, it's open, now I can enforce my anti-camping? He will say, no, absolutely not. Other cities like Manhattan Beach will say, well, yeah, I spent $100,000 this last year on a couple of beds over there, 2 beds. So I'm going to enforce my anti-camping. Now, what actually happens might be different. But I think to answer your question is that is a result of his many years of being in that office and going down that path. So I will ask these questions. You're 100% right, and I'll go down that path on Tuesday, and I will ask him privately as well next couple of days before I get there and talk about it.
I think also if you could give it a broader brush in indicating that we should possibly take a look at all our managers to see what they're doing, if they're comparable to what other cities in the area are paying as well. I mean, because what it appears that when you ask a police officer or a firefighter or even a clerk typist to take a $500, $400 hit every month, you know, like they did a while back when they reduced the pay, that's not a, you know, that's a drop in a bucket over to for the city attorney or for the city manager. So again, the thing is that I think we should take a look at most of the management level pay to determine whether it is comparable to everybody else. We're not trying to do, I wouldn't want to do this on the cheap. I do believe we need quality people.
Yeah.
And we should pay them as well, but we should get good quality service as well.
Yeah, I 100% agreed. And to that point exactly, we pay our personnel Redondo Beach really, really, really well. You compare us with other cities, we do a phenomenal job at paying our employees and taking care of our employees financially and with the benefits and everything else that goes along with it. We really do. And so we should be getting a higher level of service. And so looking at that now, city management staff or city manager's office will tell you that when we had in 2008, we furloughed or we had a 6% pay cut across the board. The city employees said we never got that money back. Well, it's not true. We did. They did over the years get that 6% and then some back. And these last few years, we've been paying bonuses to the employees. So not as a personable benefit, but as just a cash. Hey, we have extra money, and we're going to disperse it to all the employees. So it's a very fair conversation to have. I agree with you on that. But also, one thing we've been doing in many departments, except for the fire department, is cutting some of the management staff or directly below the department heads and pushing those responsibilities back onto the department heads. It's happening in every single department right now except the fire department. So and if we wanted to do a pay cut to employees, we'd have to go back to each employee group and ask for that, whether it's from furloughs or a direct pay cut. I don't think you're going to see it happen. So that's why you're seeing this tact being taken by city management of just not filling vacant positions, deauthorizing positions, and not funding positions, which are 3 different methods to manage the budget. So when it comes to furloughs and pay cuts, we have to go through the unions, and we can't just flat out say you're getting a pay cut. Any other questions from anyone else before I move on? Okay, so I got those notes being written down. Thanks for those comments. I've got some questions here that came in regarding, some people asked electric bikes and electric scooters on the bike path by Shade Hotel. Yes, they are allowed because they go less than 15 miles an hour. As long as you go 15 miles an hour or less, those do not count as motorized vehicles. If they go 15 miles an hour or more, they do count as motorized vehicles. I think motorized skateboards are not allowed on the bike path for LA County, but people just go ahead and use it. It hasn't been too much of a problem. I haven't seen too much of a problem on that. LA County does not allow, has the same ordinances in place as we do. So that's one of the questions that I had. Wanted to go over. Also, sad to report, there was an old wine shop on the northeast corner of Torrance and Broadway. It's an old building. I picked up a photo the other day, a couple months ago. Actually, it was a year ago, actually. They're going to demo that old wine shop, those commercial businesses, and they're going to put in some condos. If anyone knows the exact number, feel free to jump on right now. I meant to get that picture out and show that. I didn't have.
I don't think they could build more than 3 or 4 because of the size of the lot. When it was for sale, I actually had a client of mine looking at it, and we talked to the building department about it.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's 3 or 4. It's no more than that. But it's the old wine shop. Everyone knows the old wine shop on that corner there. I haven't driven by there myself, but I got a message that it was being worked on. It's going to be demoed and rebuilt, which
Yeah.
is exactly what we don't need in Redondo Beach, was more residential and less commercial. So it's sad to see, you know, but there's not much we can do about it. The zoning is there and it's in place, and we can't do anything about it. So, yeah, change the zoning, get that general plan done, and move forward with rezoning our commercial, keep it commercial, not residential. But then we run into problem with the state, which is trying to force more housing and more residential down towards us. But you know, there's only so much we can do. Let's see here. Any other questions? I don't see anything in the chat box. COVID Legato update. Oh, Legato update. Yes, don't want to forget this. I have been in contact with a guy named Phil over at Legato. He's supposed to get back to me. They are actively starting to do demo, cut down trees, clean out the buildings, do basic general cleanup, site demo, not building demo. They put up their sound wall. Their sound wall is in place. They are clearing out the hotel. They are removing both in the hotel and the Bristol Farms location. They're removing all hazmat. After they get done with that, SCE will be on site and they will be retrenching or trenching electrical lines over to International House of the Pancake House. And there is a shared utility line goes in within their property, and so they're moving that to the back portion of the property. So when all that is done, they will apply for their demo permit, and they will demo the old Bristol Farms, and they will build a 6-story building, 3 stories of underground parking and 3 stories of above ground residential and commercial. So take a picture of the place now with your picture outside of it before it's gone. And then expect here in the next few weeks for that to start happening. It's sad to see it go. I wish they would have done something differently than put apartments there, but that's the way it was zoned, and so that's what they got. So we can't do anything about it at this point in time. Let's see. Anything else? Any other questions out there? I don't see any hands raised. We went over a lot. Anyone have anything? Wayne?
I had one question just about construction. I know that's not in District 1, but on Catalina, I think it's about near where that Catalina Coffee used to be. What's the status of that project? Has that been put on hold, or are they just? I know that there was something with the owner and some either they lost the lease or lost the mortgage or something. It was some weird thing. Is that continuing, or is that just on hold?
I don't know. We signed an environmental impact report agreement with them. They put down a bond. They were doing the work. City was doing the work and billing the developer or landowner for the work through our environmental company. I haven't heard anything from them about it. I've heard rumors, but I haven't heard anything officially. It hasn't come back to the council on that either. So I really have no idea what's going on with that.
Okay. Yeah, the reason I asked is that was like a 24-unit project, I think, and I was just thinking of the traffic, that'll obviously cause. So.
Yeah. Again, that's more commercial. That would be disappearing. Exactly what we don't need. Holly, you had your hand raised. Question? Go ahead and unmute.
Am I? Oh, no, I'm unmuted, right? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. We can hear you just fine.
Yeah, I just want to know. You know how in the past when you've had council meetings that have been really full and then you have a televised screen outside and people could sit outside and watch the meeting?
Yes.
Couldn't we just sit outside and watch the meeting now? And if you have the chairs placed 6 feet apart and stuff, and then have a microphone out there so you could ask questions? Because the way you're doing stuff is really not very user-friendly.
I couldn't agree with you more, Holly. There's only so much I can push. There's only so much I can try to move forward on. I've tried getting public comment installed. It's a city clerk issue, what they're comfortable with. We just voted on this last week, Tuesday, to get public comment on Zoom. We have a council chamber that needs to have the technology upgrades done to it properly. And then we need to have staff properly trained, managed, and moving forward on it. I couldn't agree with you more. Something needs to be done differently. We're moving forward on it very slowly. I've had issues. I've publicly called out our city manager and for not having it and lack of ability. So I'm here to provide those services. Whatever, if they need money, if they need services, let's just move it forward. Unfortunately, we haven't had that. Last week, Tuesday, we voted on getting Zoom installed and for the community. Hopefully it happens sooner or later by July 1, by the first meeting in July. We'll see. They finally got the Harbor Commission and the Budget and Finance on Zoom. I didn't think it was that hard, but they made it seem really hard. It's a frustrating portion of my job when I'm trying to get more transparency and more access. I'm pushing. I understand, Holly. I hear you on that. But no, the answer right now is we're in a hole. Any other questions from you, Holly, on that? Your hand's still raised. Any follow-up? If not, you can take your hand down. Don't worry about it. And I can move on to the next one. There you go. Hand is down. All right, Dan Brown, you have a question about something, about anything? And you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. Thanks, Nels. I agree with Holly, first of all. I think you should do that. You've done it in the past. But
Yeah.
my question is, on South Broadway, they started to trim the trees, but they stopped south of us. And I'm wondering, is there still tree trimming going on, or did you stop that? And when can we expect it up here if it's still going?
So what block did you say you were on again?
Broadway.
Broadway, okay.
South Broadway, 400.
Yeah, oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. You're across. Yes, yeah. So you should be in the grid for grid 1. I will check for you right now. Ted. Grid 1. What is the boundary? I will find out for you. You should be grid 1. I thought grid 1 goes up until Torrance Boulevard, or actually just past Torrance Boulevard. It could be on this side where you are. You could be the demarcation zone. That's kind of the gray area between where the grids mark. They have the city broken up into 4 different grids, and grid 1 it's getting cut right now. They should be done with cutting grid 1. So if they haven't gotten to you, you might be grid 2. So and that starts off actually in July. Grid 2 starts off in July, okay. August. So if you are grid 2, you'll be cutting grid 2 and starting in July.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you want to ask him about the letter? Or
Any other questions? Dan, did you have any questions? You are still, you still have your hand up and you are not on mute right now. So you can go ahead and ask any questions you want. You still have the floor if you want.
Okay. I just have a question about Mayor Brandt's letter to Sacramento regarding the stack and pack housing.
Yeah.
And I just thought something that he could add to the letter is
Okay.
that the data from COVID-19 pandemic show that high population density is the main risk factor for disease spread. These viruses will be around in perpetuity, so we should plan ahead and not pack more people into small spaces. And I think adding the public health issue in, since public health has been the justification for all actions over the last 3 months, perhaps the state will recognize that.
There's no way they're going to recognize that. They want to stack and pack as much as they can. That's the honest answer. But yes, I will absolutely have him put that in there. I think that's in the blue folder item, or maybe it's in the folder right now.
I think it's P1.
Yeah. I have not read that letter myself yet. P1. Density. Yeah, Mayor Brand and I have had that conversation many times regarding density. He'll also say that Hong Kong, which is one of the densest populations in the world, has not been hit very hard with the COVID virus because they have been doing social distancing and face masks and cleaning and things like that. I think, I don't know. I think there's definitely something to that. But also we don't live in Hong Kong.
No,
where-
you have New York as the example for the United States. Hong Kong is a completely different story, and they live differently, and they wear masks all the time anyway for air pollution. And they wear good masks, not those silly cotton things. So, that have 97% particle transmission.
Right.
So no, you can't compare the United States to Hong Kong, but what the data is comparing is New York City to other areas of the country. And public health has been used as the justification for taking away various things and changing public policy. So why can't it start changing public policy on stack and pack? And it's one of the reasons they were able to find the virus in feces in apartments in Wuhan, several floors down, just because of this whole stack and pack idea. But no, nobody's saying to use Hong Kong is not a good example for the United States. It's a completely different society, and they do things completely differently over there. But New York, look at the data from New York.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's so complicated. Every society is different, how they interact with each other, from public transportation to social, whether you give another person a hug or not. In Australia, you don't give people hugs. You don't do that. You just don't. That's just not their social thing. Germany has been looked at like, that they manage this coronavirus so well. But Germany does things completely different. They don't have a real central health department like the United States has. They let every state govern their own central health.
Right. That's why we need to look at New York. Just forget about other countries.
Yeah.
And all that, you can't compare to other countries, and you can never use Singapore to compare by. But, So, but we have our own, we have New York. New York is in the United States, and there's plenty of data from that.
Yeah, and I think if you look at California as a whole, we started the shutdown, mid-March, I think it was, March 16th, something like that,
March
right?
15th.
But we had our first confirmed death from coronavirus on February 6th up in San Jose, in the Bay Area. And now the federal researchers have confirmed that coronavirus was in California in December.
Correct.
And there were a lot of people who were infected in December, and I'm not sure if it was November as well, but I know for a fact it was December. So coronavirus was here running rampant for months and months and months. I think one of the reasons why it hit us like New York was, you're absolutely right. We don't have this mass transportation. We were safer in our own individual cars. Number one person gets sick on a mass transportation, you don't get 10 or 20 other people sick. You get yourself sick. That's number one. And number two is we live in an outdoor environment, not indoor environment like New York does. We like going outside in California. Our weather is nice. We like hiking and biking and walking and enjoying the great outdoors. That's a prelude, or not prelude, that is a requirement to live in California almost,
Mm-hmm.
In New York, they're all huddled inside because it's freezing cold. I mean, one sick person goes on public transportation, infects 10 or 20 other people, or 5 people, and then goes into a crowded bar or restaurant where it's hot, it's recirculating air, and they're next to each other, crammed in small places, small environments. There's pizza shops that are small, their bars and nightclubs are small, their restaurants are small, their meeting areas are small, everyone's all very close to each other. The ability to transmit the virus is very great. There was a party up in RPV this last March, I think it was, and 10 people, I think, got infected because there was a small, close environment. There was a couple people who were observing social distancing and not handshaking, and they did not get sick. So it all depends. There's a lot of other factors involved. And I think what we're doing now, reopening everything up with social distancing, with face masks, with washing your hands, is good enough. So,
no.
Any other questions?
No, I was just talking about the letter. All that other stuff is fine, but I was specifically talking about the letter. Okay.
Yeah, we completely got off topic there. Somebody had a question here. Is there a way to prevent construction trucks from going down residential streets? Not really. That's a very hard thing to do. I mean, they can't, construction trucks can't use residential streets as thoroughways or pathways. They can use PCH and highways. They can only use it for actual deliveries. Can we remove the meeting at the Performing Arts Center to allow for distancing? Oh, that's a good, can we move the meeting? Yeah, that's a good idea. Move the meeting to the Performing Arts Center, allowing people to set up there. I don't think everyone's thought about that. That's a phenomenal point. I will tell you right now what city staff will say, and then say, oh, it's too difficult. We don't have the broadcast equipment. We don't have the AV equipment. We don't have the technology infrastructure to be able to do that. But I don't agree with that. I think we could figure it out. I mean, listen, there's no reason why webcams and microphones wouldn't be able to work. I don't see that not possible. That's a great question. I'm going to have to bring that up. Let me write that down right now. Not use RV. I like having these meetings. You guys bring up some good points. good questions. All right. Anything else?
Nils, I had one thing I wanted to thank you, Councilmember Lowenstein and Mayor Brand, for pushing back on the money that we were getting for emergency use for the COVID funding. From what I understand, the three council members from up north wanted to spend, was it $65,000 on cleaning empty buses that weren't being used. Yet you and Mr. Lowenstein and Mayor Brand fought back. Actually, it came back later in the meeting, and you actually got monies for more deserving causes, I think, than cleaning empty buses. And for people that know, it wasn't like something like $60,000 or $80,000 that was put more toward like the 1736. I always get the name wrong. The 1736 clinic.
Family Crisis Center.
Yeah, for battery.
So there was we had some CDBG funding, community development block grant from the feds. They want to spend some $60,000 to decontaminate and clean, sanitize the Beach Cities transit bus that no one uses. That was an absurd use of funds. And so I redirected the Harbor Interfaith that deals with $30,000, $28,000 to them for the deals with the COVID response for homelessness and Project Room Key and other services they're doing here in Redondo. $5,500 for Councilman Grand deserves some credit as well for getting for some kids group in North Redondo. I forgot exactly what their name was. And then the Family Crisis Center here in Redondo Beach as well for Family Crisis Center. I think it was either that or some place on Camino Real for children's teeth and dental activities. So they got $8,600 as well. So that was great work. I'm glad we came together on that. Ended up being a hard-fought victory and won, but it was unanimous in the end. So our county library is open for pickups. I don't know. I don't think so. We don't have any county libraries here in Redondo. Our libraries are still closed. So any other questions? I don't see anything here in the chat box. I don't see anything in my inbox. I think we got to everything. So thank you guys very much for your participation. I appreciate it. It was streamed live on YouTube as well. So when I get this meeting recording done, I'll post it online so everyone can watch as well. So thank you guys all very much for your time and effort, taking your time out of your day to be a part of this. Civic community engagement is very important, and it's awesome. You guys brought so many great questions and great points. I'll be bringing these back to Tuesday to the budget meeting, as well as privately to some of the city staff. So thank you guys very much, and have a great Saturday afternoon. See you later, everyone.